Today, we'll take a look at Open Up 7th grade Unit 4, Lesson 9, More and Less Than 1%. So today's goals is to be able to find percentages of quantities like 12.5% and 0.4%, and they're not just whole number percents. And I understand that to find 0.1% of a number, I can multiply it by 0.001. So we're going to look at some fractions of a percent. So it's important to note that a percentage, such as 30%, that's a rate per 100. That means 30 out of 100. So if I want to find 30% of a quantity, I can multiply it by 30 over 100, or just by 0.3. This same method works for percents that are not whole numbers. So like if we have 2.5% of a quantity, like pictured in the diagram below, that's 2.5 out of 100. That's the same thing as 0.025, and we can multiply our number by that. Sometimes we're going to be able to use some mental math. When we have percentages like 2.5%, we can mentally convert to a whole number and then adjust our answer. For example, if I gave you a problem like, what's 2.5% of 80? You might ask yourself, well, what's 25% of 80? And since you know that 25% is a fourth of 80 is 20, so 25% of 80 is 20. And since 2.5% is 1/10 of 25%, 2.5% of 80 would be 1/10 of 25% of 80, so we would just have 1/10 of 20, which is 2. So again, we'll try to look at some examples together and see what you can do. If you see 40%, 4%, and 0.4%, how are they related to each other? Well, you just know they're each 1/10 of the one before it. So how could we use 40% to help calculate the other percentages? I want you to try a couple problems. If you know that 40% of 95 is 38, could you try to find 4% of 95? And could you try to find 0.4% of 95? I hope you answered 3.8 and then 0.38. But if you know 1% of a number, how could we use that to calculate 0.5% of a number? Right, I hope you know that since 0.5% is half of 1%, your answer, your value would be half as big. Right, just a quick review of the goals. We're going to want to use mental math and multiplying to find these percentages.